Usually when we think of royal advice, we picture something straight out of a political thriller.
Oh, definitely.
Like a seasoned king pulling his heir aside in some dimly lit stone corridor, right? Whispering about military alliances or taxation strategies or how to systematically crush a rebellion.
Yeah, that classic Machiavellian playbook.
Exactly. We expect the advice to be cold, calculating, and, well, entirely about the mechanics of power.
Right, like keep your friends close, your enemies closer, and just manipulate the system to your advantage.
But today's deep dive it's completely different. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you are here with us. Because today, this isn't a king plotting in a war room. It's actually a mother giving her royal son a devastatingly practical masterclass.
It really is.
Our mission today is to pull apart Proverbs 31. We're looking at two sources, the original ancient biblical verses and a modern application guide, just to see how this text completely flips everything we know about power, economics, and human character.
It's a massive paradigm shift.
It really is. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to spend time thoroughly summarizing this rich, poetic blueprint laid out in the ancient text. And then we're going to pivot. We're dedicating the second half of this deep dive, which will clock in at under 9 minutes, to a very focused segment.
Right, the application phase.
Yes, mapping those ancient mechanics to see how they directly apply to your modern life, your daily decisions, and ultimately how they strengthen your trust in a higher design.
The contrast to that typical royal playbook you mentioned is what makes this material so compelling from the very start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it opens with the words of King Lemuel, explicitly stating that this is the prophecy or the oracle that his mother taught him.
Wow, okay.
And before she ever describes what an ideal, highly productive life looks like, she starts with this stark, really urgent warning about what can absolutely destroy it.
And you can immediately hear, like, the maternal weight in her voice. She says, what, my son? And what, the son of my womb? And what, the son of my vows?
Intense.
It's an intensely personal opening. She's essentially grabbing him by the shoulders, right? Demanding his full attention, warning him not to give his strength to women or his ways to that which destroys kings.
She is addressing the absolute heaviest burdens of the crown, the inherent temptations of ultimate power.
Right.
And she zeroes in immediately on one specific vice to illustrate her point, which is alcohol. She tells him, "It is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes strong drink."
Let's unpack the logic here, because she is very specific about the mechanism of why he shouldn't be drinking.
Exactly.
It's not framed as a generic, wellness tip. She says, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted.
Yeah, the afflicted. That's the key.
If we put this in a modern context, a king drinking on the job isn't just someone letting off steam. It's the equivalent of a commercial airline pilot taking a shot of whiskey right before takeoff.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. The stakes are simply too high for the passengers, or in Lemuel's case, the citizens.
What's fascinating here is that the mother isn't merely worried about his personal health or even his public relations image.
No.
She is strictly, fiercely concerned with how his lack of self-control will physically and socially harm the most vulnerable people in his kingdom.
The people who can't defend themselves.
Exactly. The text actually creates a sharp contrast between the king and those who are perishing or have heavy hearts. It suggests letting them have strong drink and wine to numb their pain, to forget their poverty and remember their misery no more.
Wow. Okay.
But the king, his mind must remain relentlessly sharp.
And why is that sharpness so critical? The text gives him a direct command. It says, "Open thy mouth for the dumb," meaning the voiceless, "in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction."
Right.
She is literally ordering him to judge righteously and plead the cause of the poor and needy. If I'm reading this right, an ancient king wasn't just a figurehead, he was the Supreme Court.
Yes, absolutely.
So if his judgment is compromised by indulgence, the entire system of justice just collapses.
That is the core mechanism of her warning. The physical safety and social standing of the afflicted rely entirely on the clarity and the integrity of the leader.
Makes sense.
When a leader indulges in destructive, selfish behaviors, it's never just a private failing. The vulnerable are always the ones who end up paying the ultimate price for a leader's lack of discipline.
So we have this intense, high-stakes warning about what a leader must avoid at all costs.
Yes.
But then the mother completely shifts gears. She moves from the negative space into the positive, painting what is arguably the most famous section of the chapter, the ultimate example of a righteous, productive life. She introduces the virtuous woman.
Right, starting at verse 10. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies.
Above rubies.
And what follows is this massive, highly detailed account of unparalleled economic and domestic output. The text notes that the heart of her husband safely trusts in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil.
And, I mean, the sheer volume of her activity is staggering. The text says she seeks wool and flax, working willingly with her hands. She is compared to merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She is getting up while it is still night to give meat to her household and a portion to her maidens.
It's incredible.
She considers a field, and she buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard.
We also see her deeply involved in manufacturing and supply chain management.
Right.
She perceives that her merchandise is good, her candle doesn't go out by night, she lays her hands to the spindle and the distaff to make thread.
Okay, wait.
She makes fine linen and sells it, delivering girdles to the merchants.
I need to hit pause here because reading this list through a modern lens feels incredibly overwhelming.
Oh, totally.
Is it just me, or does this sound exhausting? I mean, she is a real estate investor acquiring land, an agricultural manager planting vineyards, an importer coordinating with merchant ships, a midnight baker, and a textile manufacturer.
That's a lot.
Is this supposed to be a realistic daily to-do list for one human being? Because it sounds like a recipe for total burnout.
It absolutely sounds exhausting if we view it as a literal 24-hour checklist. But context changes everything here.
Okay, how so?
Ancient households, particularly large, prominent ones like the text describes, didn't function like a modern nuclear family. They operated as complex microeconomies.
Ah.
They depended heavily on this kind of multifaceted resource management just to survive the harsh realities of the ancient world. It's not a daily checklist. It's a poetic celebration, highlighting that diligence and hard work create immense stability.
So she isn't just checking off chores. She is essentially running a diversified holding company.
Exactly.
She has a real estate arm when she buys the field, an agricultural arm with the vineyard, and a textile manufacturing arm. And the profits from one are funding the capital expenditures of the next.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. It's a masterclass in capital allocation and operational efficiency.
Wow.
And it highlights how diligence creates that immense stability. For example, the text notes her household isn't afraid of the snow because they are clothed in scarlet.
Okay, let's dig into that specific detail. Why scarlet? I mean, a red wool coat doesn't physically keep you any warmer than a brown wool coat,
Right, because in the ancient world, scarlet dye was incredibly expensive and labor-intensive to produce.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so clothing her entire household in scarlet wasn't just about winter fashion. It was a visible, undeniable economic signal.
A status symbol.
Exactly. It meant her family was so financially secure, so well prepared, that a harsh winter wasn't a threat. It's a testament to the fact that her proactive management has built an absolute fortress of stability around the people she cares for.
And while she is building this fortress, her husband is known in the gates, sitting among the elders of the land. But what really strikes me is that the text doesn't just leave her as this unstoppable, cold economic engine.
No, it doesn't.
It transitions beautifully from her physical and financial labor into the architecture of her inner character.
Which is where the true depth of her virtue is revealed. All of her wealth generation isn't just for hoarding or personal luxury. Verse 20 says, "She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy."
So her economic power is inextricably linked to her compassion.
Precisely.
We also get a look at how she communicates. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness.
The law of kindness.
And the result of this incredible blend of industry and empathy is that her children rise up and call her blessed, and her husband praises her. But then we hit verse 30, which feels like the thesis statement for the entire text.
Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is a massive psychological pivot. The text spends 20 verses exhaustively detailing her incredible wealth, her silk and purple clothing, her real estate acquisitions, her thriving businesses. And then at the very end, it completely flips the script on what actually matters. It basically says, all that silk, all that success, all that outward projection, that isn't the core of her worth.
This raises an important question about what society values versus what actually endures.
Yeah.
Why is favor deceitful? Because charm and favor are often manipulative tactics. They are used to extract short-term value from other people.
Wow, that's true.
And beauty is temporary. But the text argues that her inner character, Specifically, her reverence, her fear of the Lord, is the bedrock foundation. That inner character is the true source of the praise she receives. That is what sustains her through the dark nights and the winter snows.
Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. You know, it's easy to look at this ancient microeconomy and think, well, I'm not weaving flax or trading with merchant ships today, so what does this have to do with me?
Right, it feels distant.
But if you strip away the spindle and the vineyard, what you are really looking at is a timeless framework for human behavior. So this marks our transition into the application phase. For the next several minutes, we are going to map these ancient blueprints directly onto your modern life. So what does this all mean for you today?
Looking at the Modern Application Guide, the translation is actually seamless. Let's start with the mother's warning to King Lemuel about self-control.
Okay.
The guide points out that ancient kings were required to exercise discipline because their choices affected entire nations. Today, that translates directly to leadership in any sphere, whether you are a CEO, a middle manager, or leading a community organization.
Because the mechanics of power haven't changed, a lack of personal discipline still leads to compromised decision-making.
Exactly.
If you are exhausted from indulgence, or you let your emotions govern your reactions, you cannot accurately judge a situation. You will inevitably harm the projects, and more importantly, the people who rely on your clarity.
Which ties perfectly into the second major modern application, advocacy. Lemuel was commanded to open his mouth for the voiceless. The modern equivalent is using whatever influence you have to defend the vulnerable. You might not be sitting on a throne, but speaking up for a marginalized coworker, volunteering for a community group, or simply ensuring fairness in your local neighborhood is the exact same timeless duty.
Applying this is like building a house. The foundation is self-control.
I like that.
And the framing is your hard work and time management. Because when we look at the virtuous woman, her ancient household management translates directly into modern resource allocation. You might not be buying a field, but you are managing a budget.
Right.
You might not be spinning thread, but you are managing your time. Consistent effort, careful financial planning, and proactive problem solving still create that exact same fortress of stability for your family today.
And returning to your house analogy, the roof that actually protects the people inside is your compassion and justice. The guide emphasizes the profound modern relevance of her compassion and her speech. In her tongue is the law of kindness. In an era where digital communication often defaults to cynicism or tearing people down, choosing to speak with wisdom and kindness is a radical act of leadership.
It really is.
It builds relationships rather than extracting value from them. Volunteering and charity strengthen communities.
It really emphasizes that character matters infinitely more than appearance or status. Modern culture obsessively pushes us to project an image, to chase the metaphorical silk and purple.
Constantly.
But this passage is a model for anyone seeking a meaningful life, arguing that long-term respect only comes from moral integrity.
These principles are universal. Character and work ethic are what create a lasting impact in any era.
And this brings us to the spiritual application phase. How do all these practical everyday actions, managing a spreadsheet, speaking kindly to a colleague, resisting a destructive habit, actually elevate your spiritual life?
That's the real core of it.
How does this ancient information strengthen your trust in your relationship with God? Because honestly, when I hear the phrase fear of the Lord, my modern brain immediately jumps to being terrified of a punitive, angry deity.
Sure.
Is that what is driving her relentless work ethic? Is she just terrified of making a mistake?
That is a very common misconception. In the context of ancient wisdom literature, fear translates much closer to profound reverence or awe.
Okay, awe.
It's an overarching respect for God's design of the universe. Proverbs 31 isn't a secular productivity manual. That reverence is the anchor that makes all the other virtues possible.
So addressing you listening right now, trusting God isn't just a quiet mental exercise you do on a Sunday. Trusting God is proven in the mechanics of your Tuesday afternoon.
Absolutely.
It's proven in how you allocate your resources, how you treat the intern at your office, and how you manage your impulses. When you practice self-control instead of indulgence, you are actively trusting that God's way of living is better than the quick hit of satisfaction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, our relationship with God is strengthened when we act out His values in the real world. By stretching out our hands to the needy, just as the virtuous woman did, we are reflecting God's moral integrity to the world around us.
Yeah.
We aren't just reading about justice, we are participating in it.
And when we prioritize character over fleeting charm, when we truly internalize that favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. We are actively trusting God's design for a meaningful life rather than the world's metric of success.
Right.
The world tells you to endlessly chase status, to optimize for visibility. But choosing to quietly build a life of integrity, compassion, and hard work requires immense faith. It requires believing that those quiet virtues will ultimately outlast aggressive ambition.
When you align your daily habits with these ancient virtues, you are drawing closer to the divine character. It transforms the mundane. Managing your finances responsibly so you can be generous, or refusing to gossip about a coworker, isn't just a good habit anymore.
No.
It becomes a tangible act of worship. You are letting God's priorities become your priorities.
It bridges the gap between the highest spiritual ideals and the gritty reality of a Tuesday morning. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have.
We started with a mother's stark, urgent warning to her royal son about how a leader's lack of discipline physically endangers the vulnerable. We broke down the awe-inspiring, multifaceted microeconomy of the virtuous woman, exploring the deep psychological truth that character compounding over time is far more valuable than the short-term manipulation of charm.
And we saw how translating those ancient blueprints into modern time management, advocacy, and self-control doesn't just make you a more effective leader, it acts as a real-world demonstration of your faith today.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with, something to chew on that we haven't explicitly touched on yet. This entire text is framed from the perspective of a mother instructing her son on what to look for in a partner and how to rule his kingdom. She is telling King Lemuel to find this incredible woman of peerless character. But it ends up functioning as a mirror. The verses say, "Let her own works praise her in the gates." True reputation isn't crafted by what we post or say about ourselves. It's the natural, unavoidable echo of our character in the community.
Wow.
So if King Lemuel ignores the first half of the chapter, if he remains an undisciplined, compromised leader who neglects justice, why would a woman of this extraordinary caliber running a highly successful, diversified microeconomy ever want to align herself with him?
That is a profound realization. You cannot simply demand excellent character from the people around you. You have to cultivate it within yourself first to be worthy of that association.
It demands that we look at our own reflection. Whether you are looking for a life partner, a business associate, or trying to build a resilient community, you have to ask yourself if your own foundational character makes you worthy of sitting at their table. So I will leave you with this. How will you apply this information in your life?